Hey everyone, and welcome to the Alliance Theater Podcast. I'm Brandon Kahn, Alliance Theater's Managing Director and your podcast host. I'm currently in week 6 of my stint as Managing Director at Alliance Theater, and I'm happy to welcome you to the very first episode of Season 6. So one of the greatest reasons why I wanted to come to Alliance Theater was because of the work that's being done on stage. I believe that the work done on the Coke stage and the Hertz stage and soon the Goizueta stage is just some of the best work that's being done around the country. And I can't wait for you to get a behind-the-scenes look at how this work is created. This season, we're pulling back the curtain to bring you behind-the-scenes conversation, artist spotlights, and a closer look at the stories that are shaping the Alliance's 2025-26 season. In this episode, Jennings Hertz artistic directors Tinashe Kajese-Bolden and Christopher Moses talk about how they put a season together. As you can imagine, selecting a season of theater is no small task. They shared what each story means to them personally, how they hope it connects with audiences, and why these productions feel so timely right now. They talk about everything from Southern Gothic horror to high-flying acrobatics to Gloria Estefan, all part of a season brimming with rich and compelling stories. I'll let them take it from here, starting with Milo Imagines the World, a journey through a young boy's vivid imagination aboard a New York City subway.
Hey, I'm Tinashe Kajese-Bolden.
I'm Chris Moses.
And we are the Jennings Hertz Artistic Directors of the Alliance Theater.
And we're excited to talk to you about our upcoming season.
Yeah.
This is a time in our organizational history where we are about to literally rip off the front of our building to make it plain that this is a place where young people are not just welcome, but where they have ownership over the building. We're building a full-time youth and family stage. So to start the season with a show that centers the journey of a young person felt essential this year. And that idea that we often assume that young people aren't capable or aren't smart enough or grown enough to have real agency in this world. I think this is a perfect story to show, like, hey, let's maybe change our assumptions on that front.
I also loved that it was a story that even if you didn't have a kid, you would come and get so much out of it and really wrestle with your own inner child and the things that we've been afraid to ask of ourselves and the stories that we have been telling ourselves, and to see the resilience of a young kid pursue things despite the environment and the world that he's in, and imagine and dream a better world. What an important message for all of us right now. Milo is a young boy that he and his sister take a train ride every Sunday. And we meet them on one of those Sundays where they're getting ready to go on this ride, and he knows where he's going. And so he's got his, his notepad and his bag and all the things that you need. And you see this young sister who's trying to also play an adult with him, and the responsibility that she is, the feet that she's walking in to do that. And then along this train ride, he sees all the different members of the community coming in and out, and the doors sort of represent these people that he is imagining that they must have a better life than him. And when he sees them, he starts drawing that world that he imagines they could be. Could they be a king? Could they be an explorer? Could they be a Broadway dancer? And those characters start to come alive on the train for him. And as you're journeying along, every stop, you start to feel his own anticipation of where he is going. And ultimately, it's a coming home to the heart of the person who originally inspired you to dream big, and seeing it through this young kid who isn't afraid to tackle and talk about and ask big questions, but resolves it in a decidedly youthful and hopeful way.
And it's a story about upending our own expectations. We always assume people have either a life that's easier, better than our own. And we get to see Milo go through that journey where he ultimately has to question his own assumptions. Wow, maybe it's not the way I expected that to be. And if that's true, what does that mean about me? How do people see me? And that question is flipped around so beautifully in this story, because then the whole audience starts to ask that same question, because we jump to conclusions and make assumptions about these characters that we're seeing on the stage as it plays out before us. So it's a beautiful journey that we also are going on with him while he and Adrian are on that subway train together. Milo first came on our radar because the entire Alliance Theater is in love with the children's picture book, and Children's Theater Company in Minneapolis was interested in producing this show, and we're looking for a creative team. And Christian Magby and Christian Albright were just, to me, the obvious choices for the composing team. So put them in touch with Children's Theater Company. They hit it off, and it turns out the book writer was Terry Guest, who was a local Atlantan that we all loved and who really grew up here at the Alliance Theater. So putting that trio together was a no-brainer, and we had a hand in the early development of that piece. We workshopped it here at the Alliance and knew we were ultimately going to produce the show. And then just fleshing out that creative team. I mean, the choice of Del was just absolute genius.
But having that source material was so particular that it needed a director, and what we found in Del was a director, choreographer who really was able to animate what it means to use your imagination, and that led a design team where the audience was complicit in the creation of this world with Milo, which was so beautiful and exciting. And we went and visited that day that we went to visit them on rehearsal, and just seeing this cast being led by this young kid was just so exciting and thrilling, and just resonates with you that we knew we were on the right path and we were touching something really magical.
And that felt particularly Alliance, that idea that a young person could lead the charge in the story that is celebrating the youth and imagination of this extraordinary kid. And I love the combination of these three Atlantan artists who built this story, and then a homegrown New Yorker, because it's such a New York story at the same time. So Del brought that and really honored
the experience of riding on the train, and just subways, the culture of the subway.
And yet it felt like such an Atlanta story. It was really a beautiful collision of those cultures.
You know what is so exciting about the way that our season started, being on this train ride and where are we going? That then we launched into opening our season with undeniably one of the greatest musicals of all time, that has taken our collective humanity on such a journey, despite the unknown, and finding ways that our universal experiences, coming to Fiddler, to be able to open our season with Fiddler, a show that would be impossible for us to produce alone, is so exciting that we can offer this to our audience and also undertake this partnership with the Atlanta Opera. The partnership really started a few years ago when we did The Shining with Atlanta Opera, and learned so much about what our audience is excited about and leaning towards. And we knew that we were really excited about working with Tomer and with the Atlanta Opera, and finding what is the thing that would be impossible for us to do separately, but we could do together. And we met over lunch and started talking about, okay, well, let's think big and dream big of what is the shows, what are the stories that we would love to tell. And I think, what did we say? We said pick 3.
It was, and not just the ones we'd love to tell. It was actually
that we
more
could do
personal. No, it was, what are your favorite? We started there. What's your favorite musical of all time?
That's right.
And we went around. Let's go to top 3.
Right. And I don't think we got to number 2.
We never got to number 2 because unanimously, once Fiddler on the Roof was thrown out there, we're like, well,
we all just sat up.
Right.
Right. And then just how we all, from such unique ways that were connected to that story, was really fascinating. And it felt so authentic and real that we could find such synergy from our own lived experience, but still offer this incredibly artistically satisfying and moving story that felt that it was also speaking to the moment we're in right now.
Absolutely. Our lived experience could not be more different. The three of us come from really different backgrounds, and yet each of our families had very specific connections to this story and looked at it as a story that spoke to our own cultures. And I think that there's so much, there are just so many virtues to Fiddler on the Roof, but one is the fact that this may be the most universally accessible story. There's a production of this that has happened every day since it first premiered in the 60s. And there's a reason, because it really does feel like your story, because everyone has dealt with this kind of displacement and families breaking up and moving away. There's such universal themes, and yet it is so specifically this Jewish story. And it's that great paradox that the more specific you can make a story, the more open and universal it becomes. And our hope is by telling this story in the most powerful way possible, everybody in Atlanta will come to this and feel like, oh my goodness, that is something I can relate to.
For me, when we were sitting at the table and we all thought about Fiddler, I'm from Zimbabwe originally. My father's from Zimbabwe. My mother's from Kansas. When he proposed to my mother and asked for her hand in marriage to move back to England, because my father was still in exile from Zimbabwe, my grandfather, I don't think really was very excited about his daughter moving halfway across the world, and certainly not to an African country that was still under the rule of apartheid. And my mother actually took him to go and see Fiddler on the Roof. It had just opened. They did not grow up going to the movies. It was a very religious family, Methodist family. And it wasn't until after watching Fiddler that my grandfather gave his blessing for her to go. And so growing up in post-apartheid Zimbabwe, I have memories of on their anniversary, we would watch Fiddler on the Roof. We'd get our little VHS out and we would watch Fiddler on the Roof. And to then be here in Atlanta and be able to say, I actually just got back from Zimbabwe, to tell my dad we're opening our season with Fiddler on the Roof, it just felt in this very strange full circle way. This story can touch so many people's lives from so many different cultures and can open up conversation and break up that fallow ground of rigid belief to see possibility on the other side. It can build families, it can build bridges, that change is terrifying and that we can hold on to tradition. But that change that is pushing us to grow, who knows where what it allows us to see and experience.
Yeah. And it's the only musical my Syrian grandfather would sing and even knew existed, I think. And it resonated with him because his family was forced to leave that country. And he would often break into tradition at family gatherings. It just meant so much to him and gave him a framework to see the world. And I thought about all of these stories when I was watching the last run through, and particularly about your grandfather and how that mirrors Tevia's experience, and how this play can really invite us to finally break these cycles of hatred and scapegoating that I think is truly such a plague on our civilization. Like, how can we finally break this cycle? And I think Fiddler on the Roof gives us an invitation to really think about that. Because Tevye, as magnanimous as he is, that moment when he is so certain and rigid in his beliefs, he stops asking those questions. Mm-hmm. He's no longer thinking on the other hand. He's saying, this is it. It's definitive, and I'm willing to sacrifice my relationship with my daughter over this.
And it's heartbreaking, but also something that we can all relate to when the next generation challenges these heartfelt belief systems. And what are we going to do when that happens? I love how we go from the tradition and ritual of family, and kind of go downstairs into this world where York Walker, the playwright, seduces us by this Southern folklore and blues. Covenant is about Johnny. He is a blues guitarist who has found fame in Chicago. Johnny has come back to his hometown in rural Georgia and really is driven by a desire to reconnect with the one person who saw him for who he was and didn't try to make him into somebody else, and that's Avery. Avery is also longing for love and connection and being able to do it on her terms. She's the older sister of Violet, and Mama rules their home with the religious fist, really just in an effort for their salvation, that she believes she's doing the right thing to protect her daughters in a world that she thinks is sinful. But when Johnny comes back, there's rumors about his success, and was it really on his own merit, or did he in fact make a deal with the devil? And that's where our story begins. And it's a story about where the truth and rumors blur. It's a story for anybody that is wrestling with the weight of their own ambition and that pull of things that are outside of our control. It's the beliefs that bind us and keep us united as a family and a community, and then the beliefs that actually break us apart. And what are we willing to risk for the love that the world has told us we cannot have? So it's the thrilling thing about it is that we've always wanted to do a horror or supernatural piece or story, and those are hard to come by, really good ones. At the same time, we're always in pursuit of really exciting stories that lean into and really capture the Southern experience. And this story does it so well. I mean, York writes with the lyricism of August Wilson, but the supernatural thriller of a Stephen King novel. And the characters are so complex and woven together in such an interesting way that you don't realize you're becoming complicit in whatever this covenant is that they've all entered into.
I think it's a perfect story to be telling at that time of year, as Atlanta really embraces this whole Halloween season and the idea of the otherworldly and ghosts. It's just kind of lingering in our consciousness across culture. So the fact that we can finally indulge all of that is really exciting. I think is maybe at least a 2-year experiment we're going to try to find those stories that we can tell at this time of the year.
And we're also really in a zeitgeist of like these Southern Gothic stories with, movies like Sinners. And there's just a lot of stories where it is sitting in the Black Southern experience and just traffics so beautifully with the blues and spirituals and voodoo and all those things.
And the mythology surrounding the blues. And do you mind sharing just a little bit about the design? Because as soon as I saw Gigi's set design in particular, it's so visceral and immersive that
so much of the provocations that we were working through with what are the stories that we bury and how and when they become unearthed. So this idea of being buried was kind of the guiding principle of the design. The whole set is a structure that feels like charred, burnt wood, which could be both a church house, a home, or a coffin. And so the set becomes this breathing thing that everything emerges from the shadows in, and the way that we're playing with the light and shadows so that we're starting to create a sense that there are these other presence around us. It's going to be creepy and but again, it is such a character-driven story that it's not about, as my 13-year-old says, jump scares. It really is when we start believing in the unbelievable, that's when it gets really scary.
Christmas Carol is as close as we come to ritual here at the Alliance Theater. It really does feel like it's elevated into that experience where generation upon generation continue to come, and not simply because it's a tradition. I think there's something deeper going on, this desire to remind ourselves collectively about what's at stake when we choose greed over generosity. There's always the story that there's always time to repent is continually inspiring too, but I think it's larger than that. I think it's about what it means for an entire community. The older I get and reflect on the story more, I often think about what has been lost because of the decisions Scrooge has made. Like, imagine if he were generous for the past 20, 30 years, how different would things look? So it's just a beautiful way to come together and contemplate what it means to live in community together, what it means to share resources, what it means to move from a reckless selfishness to really thinking about each other. And I think it's the perfect time to do that. And we're excited to welcome a new director, and Alliance employee Amanda Watkins will be taking the reins this year. So that is the main difference.
And there's also the tradition of what's happening on stage, where you're having a reunion of artists who've been telling the story, some for years, and have grown up with it. When you are watching A Christmas Carol every year, some of the kids might have grown into the older character roles, and that is also a form of tradition internally within our artistic community that is so fun to watch. And it's exciting to see the babies that also come out of the show.
I was going to say that's another great part of the family. Because of the child care initiative we have here. So many of the actors who are on stage performing Christmas Carol, their kids will be able to participate in our artist child care program. So all of these babies and toddlers will be here at the Alliance Theater doing all kinds of amazing artistic endeavors while their parents are able to be on stage.
So it's a real family time for us, but on stage and off.
Let's take a quick break with our patron services team. They're the folks on the front line answering questions from ticket buyers, including some pretty creative guesses at our show titles.
Basura, I've heard Basura. I think Basura is how it's actually pronounced. And then I've had so many people that just are like, the one that starts with a B, and then they just give up.
I heard someone call it Milo Discovers the Universe.
I had a group reach out to book Fiddler on the Floor.
For Milo, we got Milo. We got a lot of that. Milo imagines the world. Mellow. We got Mellow.
The COVID show. I did hear that about Covenant. They said the COVID. Yep. Or I say, oh, you're talking about Covenant. Or you're talking about Basura.
Yeah.
You're talking about Milo. Mm-hmm. And I have to really over-enunciate it.
Repeat.
Convenient? Or, Covenant?
Mm-hmm. Not quite. It was close.
And we're back. Up next, Chris and Tinashe share how dual reality came together and what makes it such a standout in this season.
We are committed to figuring out ways to bring teen audiences into the Alliance Theater and to create intergenerational stories. We started a program a number of years ago called Classic Remix, which was a direct response from the educators in our community, high school educators reaching out to us, which I was so moved by, looking at us as a resource to ask for help in making the work in the classic canon more accessible to their students. They were continually hitting a roadblock, like, how do I make this text still exciting for young people? And I'm not going to go into what's in the canon, but it was like, what is there? How do we lift this up off the page? And we thought maybe we could help if we start commissioning playwrights to take a fresh approach and think about this differently, or find stories that upend and invite you in a different way. So it was based on two things. That, how do we respond to that request from our educators? And two, how do we upend the notion that high schoolers can only appreciate theater if they come en masse on a school bus at 11 a.m.? It's like these are human beings. They are welcome at our theater. We are very proud that we have a $10 teen ticket. And what does it mean to be shoulder to shoulder with a bunch of teens in an audience when you're watching a show as an adult? I think it changes the experience for both demographics. So we encountered Seven Fingers first with Water for Elephants, and these are incredible acrobats, circus storytellers. And anyone who saw that show left just floored by the acrobatics.
And in awe of like what the human body can do. It was just so powerful, the storytelling that they brought, the physical storytelling, the risk that it felt that they took, which makes them pairing their ability, their acrobatics and the circus storytelling with a classic piece like Romeo and Juliet that is all about risk, and pursuing a love that feels so completely unattainable and leaping into the unknown.
And I think it disrupts our notion of what theater is too. We're often trying to break down barriers to participation, and one of them is perceptual. I think a lot of people still assume theater is this fusty night out, and to present an acrobatic retelling of one of the most classic stories ever told, I think is going to make good on our promise to those educators that here's a new way, here's a different way to enter into this beautiful text. So we can't wait to have them back here.
Yeah, I think it's going to be so thrilling. I think that the story of the underground rep really needs to get backed into the story of what it takes to do season planning and being nimble and flexible, that it's not just about filling a slot, but also balancing these multiple lenses and needs. And it really came about from a place of, we had an idea for another show that was going to open our new space. And for anybody who knows how theater is made, you got to get the rights for them. There's just so many loopholes and things that you've got to, and rights holders, and there's a lot of things that go into producing a show. And when we realized that the show that we had wanted to do, we didn't see a pathway forward that was really still representing who we are artistically. Chris and I went back to the sleepless nights and the drawing board of saying, well, do we bet on another known entity from another touring company or something else to open our new space? And even in the phrasing of that conversation, we knew that wasn't right. But how do we bet on ourselves? What are we best at? And that's what started provoking the question of, what do we have, what can we do, and what can we build?
A real story of this season is that we are opening up a new space, the Kajese-Bolden stage for youth and families. And as the construction noise we're hearing right behind us reminds us, this is not business as usual. This is a time to really dream and think about what the future may hold. So we knew we wanted to do something ambitious in that stage. And as we were digging up the grounds of the rich theater, we started thinking about what is foundational to who we are. And we thought about a story that we commissioned and produced a few years ago called Into the Burrow, which was a retelling of the Peter Rabbit stories. It was a beautiful story about sharing resources, sharing the land, connecting with your fellow creatures underground. And one of the most moving things we ever did, and it was actually the test case for the new stage, because we wanted to see how long we could run this show until we reached the ceiling of the demand. And we ran for 3 months and never found out what that was, which made us think, okay,
there's
we
an
have
appetite
proven
for
the
this.
case for the Kajese-Bolden stage. We can produce work year-round so families, educators can come. So we thought, what better way to kick off the series than with a remounted version of Into the Burrow, which takes place underground, which got us thinking about
what else
another
is
show
underground?
that took place underground, The Naked Mole Rats Get Dressed, which criminally was cut short by COVID, so it never had its
only
full
had 4
run.
shows.
It had 4 performances, and those performances, I've never seen the Coca-Cola stage more raucous, because these young people had a full-on rock and roll concert. They were losing their minds. So the thought of being able to also share that story, and what was really interesting is there were 6 actors in Into the Burrow. There were 6 actors in Naked Mole Rat Gets Dressed. They tracked kind of perfectly. So then we started dreaming about, what about a rep? You know, there's another problem we're trying to solve here, is that there is less and less consistent work for actors in our field. So we thought about, if we could create a rep model for this year, how could we give months
Maximum
of work
amount
to
of
people?
work, yeah.
So that was 2 pieces of the puzzle. And then we'd commissioned a children's picture book. We have this wonderful partnership with the Mayor Summer Reading Club, where they ask us to create a picture book that's handed out to 20,000 kids all over the city, and 80 different community partners produce events around this story, bring it to life. It becomes part of what it means to live in Atlanta over the summer. And the book that we commissioned this past year was written by Madri Shaker, a former Candida National Graduate Playwriting Competition winner. And it was called The Great Ant Sleepover. Just happened to also take place underground in an ant colony.
Right, and just happened to have 6 characters. The book was sitting on Chris's desk, and when you look at it, you see our sweet little ant in the foreground, and there's 5 little ants behind him. And immediately, the light bulb went off. We've got these beautiful stories about finding yourself and finding your inner why in a community, and that they'd all be underground. And like you said, Chris, like, what a gift we could give to our local artists to be able to do 3 different shows. And also what a gift to give to families, that you can come to the Alliance Theater 1 week and have 3 different experiences that completely upend your mind, and see how one set can transform into these different dwellings of these characters.
And we had so much fun just thinking about, like, the notion of, this is what we dug up and found this underground colony, and like the fact that all of these different communities are working together and sharing this space.
And
is
it
also
just
really
felt so
powerful.
uniquely us.
Oh, absolutely.
You know? So that was really, really exciting. We're super proud and excited about that. We are producing differently. We're changing who we are. It's just this whole new chapter that we're growing on this legacy theater, and recommitting in a really clear way, not just what we're good at, but what we're good for. And what better way to be able to share that than at a gala, which is us. It's a coming out story of our theme of blooming into the possibilities of what we're promising for the next 10, 20, 30 years, and what it means to live in Atlanta and have the Alliance Theater as your birthright, the place that you go to, the place that you grow up with. So this gala is really a celebration of that. It's an opportunity for us to talk about all the work that we do beyond the stage, and celebrate all of our incredible partners that help make that possible.
And it felt like if there was ever a time in our organization's history that demanded this kind of celebration, it was now. We're opening this stage. We're closing our season with a story that celebrates the power of art to support young people, lift them up, lift up a community. It all felt like it was connecting together. And the fact that we'll have Gloria Estefan here in our building and be a featured part of that evening made it even more perfect.
Yeah. One of the things that we love and are so proud of at the Alliance is the amount of new work that we do on all levels. And our flagship new work program is the National Candida Playwriting Competition. And it's this national competition where graduate playwrights submit their work, and it is read anonymously. Amanda Watkins, who is our director of new work, reads every single play. And then we get together with a really incredibly fascinating and influential group of adjudicators. And Chris and I have the top 5 probably top 5 or 6 that we read through. And of them, 5 of them get selected as finalists, and the winner gets produced. And it's been really thrilling in the last few years of our tenure here just to see the careers that these artists have gone on to. We're in our 22nd year of this competition. that really is seeding the field with new voices. And it's not just, I don't know any other theater that does a full production of a new work of, in many ways, an untested artist. And that is the exciting thing. They get to be in process with us, and we get to see tomorrow's writers emerge with us and come back oftentimes. Like, this is our greatest investment in the field because, and Madri's a perfect example.
That's a great example. Madri, we have commissions out to several future runners-up and winners. That begins a lifelong relationship with the Alliance Theater, but to your point, it also seeds the field of playwriting and show running. Many of these artists go on to write for TV, film. It's incredible.
But it's oftentimes it's tough to make that final decision, and we were so excited when we came across Fires Ohio.
Fires Ohio is inspired and loosely based on Chekhov's Uncle Vanya. It is, however, set in Midwestern Ohio in this liberal arts university as these fires are encroaching on that campus. So it's very much a play about this moment in time with all kinds of climate crises raging outside and crises happening on this liberal arts campus as well. It is very much a family story. Over the course of this evening, many family secrets and things that these folks have been holding close to the vest are suddenly shared openly in a way that is very much combustible. It's deeply funny in its situational humor, very much like Chekhov. The behavior between the characters is so real and smartly written. It's a real gift for actors, and one thing we're really proud of, to get back to our commitment to the local talent pool here, it is a completely local cast. So we've made that commitment, and it's a chance for these artists to really showcase those skills in a way that they don't often get to do so.
Yeah, and it's the kind of show that is perfect for anybody who wants to just get lost in the complicated underbelly of the human condition. It is so entertaining, and it pulls you in by not shying away from the flaws that we all have. And I think it's just going to be a really thrilling night at theater.
One thing that really makes the Alliance Theater unique is that we are committed to producing shows for every age group. And that includes our work for the very youngest members of our community. So we're continuing to develop new work for our very young audiences through the Bernhardt Theater for the Very Young program. And we have 2 world premieres that we're producing this year. Rhythm and Thread, which is inspired by the works of Faith Ringgold, who is an incredible artist who was just featured at the High Museum of Art. And this piece is not only inspired by Faith's work, but is actually a very personal local homage to a late great quilting artist here in town, Marquetta Johnson, who passed away last year. And her quilts are actually featured in the fabric of the costumes and the props within this show. It's created by Andrea Washington, who is a longtime Alliance Theater teaching artist. And it's her first original piece that she's developed for us. The second world premiere is Birthday of the World, and this is a piece inspired by Dr. Rachel Reman's children's book, The Birthday of the World, that shares the story of the origin of the world. And it's inspired by the Jewish tradition of Tikkun Olam, which is about how do we prepare the world. And in short, the idea is that in the beginning, the world was all light and was shattered into millions of pieces and shards of light that landed in each one of us and in everything. And it's our charge over the course of our lifetime to see the light in everybody else and start to repair the world to its original luminous beginning. So Jonathan Chapman is creating that piece. It's fully immersive, exciting. It will perform both here and tour across Atlanta. It will also be touring to Chicago and New York over the course of the year. And it's a deeply, deeply moving story that I think will resonate with audiences of all ages. Then we're remounting 2 shows, Knock Knock, which is our annual holiday tradition for 0 to 5-year-olds, and Dinosaur, which was our most successful Theater for the Very Young show ever. So we're expecting to run that one for a while as well. And both of those were created by our in-house expertise with Sam Provenzano and Olivia Aston Bosworth. So I'm deeply proud of those shows too. And if people can't get to the Alliance, we are committed to bringing work to them. So we're also going to be touring 2 shows for younger audiences. Reuben Noob, which is
One
a
of the
really
best shows ever.
fun, exciting show that plays around with building a giant Rube Goldberg machine on stage. It's all about trial and error, and talk about drama. Like, you never know if this is going to work or not each time you're putting it together. And that's for elementary school audiences. And then we're also going to be touring the Melvin Invention, which is a show designed specifically for middle school students that will tour throughout the region. We first heard about Basura when a producer reached out to us and mentioned that they were interested in a new musical that focused on the recycled orchestra of Paraguay. I flipped out because
you had watched that documentary.
I had fallen in love with this documentary, Landfill Harmonic, and I could not believe that someone was making a musical about it. And then when the producer shared that it was Karen Zacharias who's writing the book, it's a playwright.
He's an incredible playwright.
We both have a history with and really adore. Was writing the book, but then he drops the bomb that Gloria Estefan and her daughter
Emily
are writing the music. So at that point, I mean, we kind of knew, like, oh, we've got to kick the tires on this one, and we're able to go up and see a workshop. And the music was riveting, the story so deeply moving, and just felt like the perfect Alliance show in a number of ways. So what the story is about a town in Paraguay that has basically become a giant landfill, and really the only prospect for employment is separating garbage from recycled material. And an engineer is sent down there to try and figure out a humane way to separate garbage from recycled material. He fails in that endeavor, but is so moved by these conditions and seeing these young people growing up in this environment that he's determined to figure out a way to bring music into their life, because music played such a key role in his own life. And together they figure out a way to fashion instruments out of the recycled material, and they create these instruments and build this orchestra that not only instills these young people with a sense of hope, but actually transform the entire town into a point of pride. And then they end up touring all around South America and around the world, and it's about the power of the arts on the development of young people, which is exactly the story we are telling by creating this Goizueta stage for youth and family. So it felt like the perfect intersection, perfect story for us, multi-generational appeal.
And I don't think we've ever done a commercial show and partnered with commercial producers that is so aligned with our mission and the timing of it, and this invitation to always leave a place better than you found it. And again, it ties back to how we started the season. It's the imagination, the resilience of a young person who sees possibility where we see problems, who sees their future where we see a turn in the road. And to have those two balance out our season, to open it with the imagination of a child and to set ourselves off flight by seeing this young community of kids that, despite all of their hardships, they turn to art and music and the power of what they can create with their imagination, is just such a thrilling way to go through the journey of this show and this season.
And how that ultimately transforms that entire community.
Yeah. The thing that I've been really struck by with this creative team and really excited about is that they take the invitation of this mission very seriously, and they don't want to just come and do the show and be gone. There is such a desire to really engage with the Atlantan community. and to be a part of this the ecosystem that we're creating here. So I'm excited about their willingness and excitement to really connect with our city, with our artists, and I just foresee the party starting much earlier, and it really living in our hearts for quite a long time.
And for being this famous global icon, Gloria Estefan is such a humble, welcoming, hospitable human being, welcomed us like family, and is very much committed to the success of this version of this story here in this city.
That brings us to the end of this very first episode of Season 6 of the Alliance Theater Podcast. A big thank you to our artistic directors, Tinashe Kajese-Bolden and Christopher Moses, for sharing their vision for the 25-26 season. It's clear that each of these productions has been chosen with such care, not only for their artistry, but for the ways they speak to the audiences today. This season on the podcast, we'll be taking you deeper into those stories, conversations with the artists behind the work, behind the scenes glimpses of how productions come together, and reflections on what theater can mean for our community. If you'd like to learn more about the season ahead or purchase tickets, visit alliancetheater.org. Memberships for the full season are also available at alliancetheater.org/membership. There are perks to being a member, like discounts on parking, classes, and extra tickets, plus behind-the-scenes access and more. Thanks so much for listening and for being part of the Alliance community. We're thrilled to share this journey with you, and we hope you will join us next time.